Hey everybody, this is part of our full-length primetime podcast. You can check it out on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, YouTube, plenty more. I hope you enjoy.
But Brandon, we are going to move on, and we're going to talk about the Louisville Cardinals, and this one's easy to start. This one is the easiest one to start. You got to start with the Heisman, the reigning Heisman winner from last year, Lamar Action Jackson, as we like to call him here on the Primetime Podcast, or I don't know if you do. I do. I know I do. I love to call him Lamar Action Jackson. This is a guy who 3,500 yards, over 3,500 yards passing last season, 30 passing touchdowns, only 9 INTs. Oh, and then on the ground, just under 1,600 yards on the ground and 21 rushing touchdowns. Brandon, this one's going to be easy. This is a softball for you, a big meatball going right over the plate. Can Lamar Action Jackson duplicate or increase his numbers from a year ago, his Heisman winning numbers?
No, he cannot. And the reason I say that is because
for a second I thought you were just going to leave it like, no,
come on. I won't leave you hanging like that. So Lamar Jackson last year, and I mean, as impressive as it was, it was like, it really was like you were playing a video game. It was on rookie. And he had over 3,500 yards through the air, 30 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. On the ground, he had over 1,500 yards rushing and 21 touchdowns, combining for 51 total touchdowns. I don't see how you can replicate that or do better than that. That itself is outlandish. I'm not saying he's not going to be good and effective and be very productive, but I just don't know if he'll be able to have that same stellar Cinderella season like he did last season. And I even know that Bobby Petrino, he's changing things up a little bit. He's got a new coach for the offensive line to fill that hole a little bit, be a little bit better there.
47 sacks last season.
And a lot of times that, Mr. Action Jackson had to bail on some plays when he didn't want to. So things could be better there. But even still, he can have a great season and not have the same numbers that he did last year.
Let's put it this way. I will tell you exactly where Lamar Action Jackson needs to improve. He needs to be more efficient. He needs to, the one stat that I did not say because it's not that impressive to me, the last quarter.
So you just weren't going to say it.
You're not going to say it if it's not a good stat.
This isn't impressive. Let me just leave it out.
Well, when you're trying to hype him up as the reigning Heisman winner, you're not going to leave out. You're going to leave out the bad ones. But when we talked about Ridley for NC State, I mentioned his completion percentage. And I said you want to be around that 60%.
Finley. Ryan Finley.
You want to be around that 60%. That's the more important part. Lamar Action Jackson, 56.2. Not quite there. Not quite where you want him. You want to be at that 60. You want to be 60 or like 61, 62 in that ballpark. Also, he had some moments where, look at the Kentucky game, which they lost. 3 interceptions in that game. You cannot be the Heisman quarterback and have moments like those, because there's a difference between then being the Heisman. You're getting the Heisman because of your numbers. I get that. But now if you're Lamar Action Jackson, you got to be thinking to yourself, how do I get drafted? I get drafted by upping that completion percentage and eliminating my mistakes, like 3 turnover games. Coaches in the NFL don't like seeing 3 turnovers in a single game. They just don't like it.
Well, Ricky, I'll tell you what, and I'll ask you the question, is the thing that I think really, and most people are going to say this too, everyone should, the thing that hurt the most, and they went from being in the college football playoff on Saturday, November 12th, to being out of it 2 weeks later on November 26th, because they had lost down the stretch 2 games. One of those games that they needed to win. One of them.
They lost to Houston and Kentucky.
Kentucky would have been awesome to beat them because Kentucky's not that good. But Houston, I could understand because Houston was solid last year. You lose to them, but you keep it close. It wasn't anywhere near close, 36-10. There was no offense in that game. Then you even look in the Citrus Bowl against LSU. There was no offense in that game. You only get 9 points. Down the stretch, Jackson struggled. He was non-existent, even obviously as the quarterback, but
You even
he was non-existent.
You forgot the Virginia game as well. Halloween weekend where they almost lost to Virginia. If it wasn't for his heroics to throw that ball to the receiver in the side pylon of the end zone, they would have lost that game.
We didn't. I remember watching that game with my friends, and that was incredible for him to be able to make that comeback in such a bad game for him and still be able to win. But even with that, it was still a win, still counted as a win. It wasn't good for his numbers. Counts as a win, though. That's all that matters. You're still on your way to the college football playoff at that time.
Yep.
And then, boom, you just stink down the stretch. Now, Lamar Action Jackson, Ricky, this year, is he going to be able to... The big thing is not is he going to be able to repeat the numbers that he had from last year.
I don't think we see the numbers.
But is he going to be able to be solid and get the wins down the stretch when he needs to?
Yes.
Because he couldn't last year, and he was the Heisman winner.
The reason I'm gonna use a comparison from the NBA, and I'm gonna compare this to the Golden State Warriors. Where, think about it this way, last year and all the numbers and the video game this, video game that, look at all these numbers. That is exactly like the Warriors, not this past season, but the season before. Breaking the record, 73 wins, yada, yada, yada. Didn't matter. They didn't win the title. Well, with Louisville, it's going to be, I think that Lamar's going to come in this year going, you know what? Nobody gives a rat's ass how many touchdowns I have. I have over 50 combined touchdowns. Doesn't matter. Didn't make the college football playoff. And that's why I think this year, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw not a tamer. Like, it's not going to be like, well, you know what? Don't be Lamar Action Jackson. We're not going to see him just going for the numbers. We're going to see a Lamar Jackson where, that explosiveness, that athleticism is there, but wow, he's more efficient this year. He is better this year. The completion percentage is up. He's not throwing 3 interceptions in a game to Kentucky anymore, because I think and the coaching staff should have already said this to him and kind of got him thinking, is it doesn't matter how many yards, how many touchdowns you have. If you're a team like Louisville and you don't make the college football playoff, then winning the Heisman and everything doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing like the Warriors. The record didn't matter because they didn't get the ring. And that's what I think we're going to see this year. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see as video game-like numbers from Lamar Jackson, because the one thing you got to remember is this is not a video game. You couldn't be throwing 3 interceptions to Kentucky in that game and go, whoops, the plug got unplugged. I guess I'll come back and play it tomorrow. You can't do that in real life. And I look at their schedule for this year, and they got 2 games right off the bat that are going to be tough. Purdue, that's a win. I don't think Purdue gives them...
Whoa. Purdue's got a new coach, man. How are you saying they're not going to be competitive?
I don't think Purdue stands a chance. However, I know that they don't have the Trubisky anymore, but North Carolina at home could give them a run for their money. And then you get Clemson. 3rd game of the season. Boom, there you go, Clemson. And I know Clemson, I'm kind of lower on them because of their quarterback situation, but this could be good for Louisville. Because like you said, down the stretch they didn't play well. Well, down the stretch this year, you've got Virginia, Syracuse, Wake Forest, and Kentucky.
But even more of a reason why if they don't play well down the stretch, don't act like they had some big games down the stretch last year.
I mean, the Houston game was big. Houston was a good team.
Houston was a good team, but then they had.
I'm not giving any excuses for Kentucky.
I'm saying this though, but they were in Clemson.
Yeah,
Houston was good, but they were in Clemson.
Well,
come on now, Houston was good, but they weren't Florida State. If you lose to Virginia, Syracuse, or Kentucky, any one of those teams get out.
Well, and
Get
I mean,
out.
I'm not going to say that Houston wasn't Clemson, Houston wasn't Florida State because
No, you don't need to say that because I did.
Well, no, because Houston was a team that I would say was on the same level of. I thought they would be when we were doing our predictions throughout the season and our rankings. I had Houston as a college playoff team a couple weeks that year. Like, the only thing that made that loss surprising was Houston had been knocked out of the race just a week or two before. Houston had lost a week or two before, and it was like, well, Houston's not in the running anymore because they lost. Whereas then they beat Louisville, and it's like, well, now Louisville's out of the running, kind of. Oh, can they get it back with a Kentucky win? And then they lost. I think this year, Lamar Jackson is going to have a more efficient season, and we're going to see a Lamar Jackson where it's going to be like, the numbers don't matter. What matters is getting the W for my team. I want to flip it, though. We've talked about the offense ad nauseum. The one thing I want to mention on the defensive side, which is going to be a big key, is how is Petrino going to do this season defensively when this is the first year that all those talented recruits that were brought in by Charlie Strong on the defensive side, they're all sayonara, see you later, they're gone. They're all gone. So now it's one of those things where if the defense lacks, now we're looking at it where it's like, maybe it wasn't Petrino. It was just those talented recruits that Charlie Strong brought in. So defensively, that's something I'm looking at, is how are you going to overcome those talented recruits that Charlie Strong had before he had left for Texas?
I think that they've got a new guy coming in now, Peter Sermon, and he's coming in now to coach the defense after Todd Grantham leaves for Mississippi State. And the hope there is that he's going to be able to bring a lot of different fronts, a lot of different schemes, 3-4, 4-3, be able to do some things like that. And maybe with that, that will be able to help on the defensive side of things. And honestly, when you take a look at the defensive side of things for Louisville, there really wasn't anything where you looked at them and you went, man, they're just absolutely awful. The only time that I looked at them and said, was towards the end of the season when they gave up the 36, the 41, and the 29 in their last 3 games that they played. That was really the time when I looked at them and went, ooh, that ain't good. Because before that, the most points that they had given up was 42. That was in the loss to Clemson. Overall, the defense was not bad. It really was not. But, you bring in a new defensive coordinator, defensive guy, and you're always interested to kind of see what the results will be.
Well, new coordinator on top of, like I said, you're losing some talented guys from that defense last year. I just wanted to give the defense some sort of love because and a Louisville preview is for this year, you knew it was going to be a heavy dose of just an injection of Lamar Action Jackson right to the arm, right to the bloodstream. But kind of to end this out with Louisville, we mentioned that Clemson, we're going to talk about them next. Me and you kind of don't seem that high on them. It's Florida State and it's Louisville. I'm going to ask you this. Do you visualize in your head, can you close your eyes and see Louisville playing, I'm just going to say playing in the ACC title game with a chance to make the college football playoff with a win? Can you close your eyes and see that for the end of the season?
Okay, so here is exactly how I see it, and I'll give it to you very plain and simple.
Okay.
If Louisville beats Clemson, and if they beat Florida State,
if they beat
Clemson and beat Florida State, they're in the college football playoff, plain and simple.
They don't have to, nothing special about the NC State or the North Carolina game.
No.
It just comes down to Clemson, just comes down to Florida State.
If they beat Clemson and they beat Florida State, they're in.
And that's why I think that October 21st game is going to be the most important game, because I would right now give Louisville the edge over Clemson in a matchup. And Florida State, that game is in Tallahassee. Francois is going to be coming out with a vengeance. Kind of, I wouldn't be surprised if that game is the, like, oh, you think you're the best quarterback, Mr. Reigning Heisman? Well, let me show you something from DeAndre Francois. I can't wait. That game is circled on my calendar, and I am definitely going to be watching that one when it comes. Probably it'll be in prime time. They'll probably have that one. College game day will probably be there in Tallahassee because there's a chance that both these teams could be undefeated coming into that game. But Brandon, before we move on to Clemson, any last thoughts? Anything you think that we didn't mention when it comes to the Cardinals of Louisville?
And I think we're good.
Well, and this is where Cardinal fans let us know. I know Trevor's going to let us know. Trevor, our resident Louisville fan, is going to let us know down below in the comment section. What do you guys think? Are you guys excited for this year? Do you think you're going to win the ACC and go to the college football playoff in 2017? Let us know down below in the comment section.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed a lot of emotion. If you want more, click this video right over my left shoulder. You will certainly not regret it.